welcome to the Blue Shoes Fitness Podcast, where we talk about strength training, nutrition, faith, family, and how all of those things work together for parents like you and me. My name is Coach Jay, and today I want to give you some boots on the ground, practical things that you can do today to improve your fitness as a parent. There are a lot of complicated and contradictory pieces of advice out there, and it is very easy to get lost in all of it. And so this episode is all about keeping things simple and actionable, especially if you're just trying to figure out where to start. So let's kick things off with our verse of the week. And for this, we're heading back to Proverbs chapter 8, verses 10 and 11. It says, "Choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold, for wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare with her." So that's kind of a big claim that Proverbs is making here, is that wisdom is worth more than anything that you could possibly have, much less desire. And so this is a section of Proverbs that I love coming back to. And if you are looking for again, a really kind of simple, actionable way to approach scripture, and if you just have no other place to start, I love doing a proverb a day type studies to where there are 31 proverbs and you can match that up with the days of the month. And so I'm recording this on the 8th, and I just chose this. I opened up Proverbs 8 and just was reading through this, and this section, these two verses stuck out to me. And that's because I think that in the bigger picture of Proverbs, especially at the beginning, in the kind of the first half of the book of Proverbs, it contrasts two different metaphorical women, and it's talking about wisdom as a woman and the adulterous woman. And these two women are very much at odds. And the book of Proverbs is written largely from the perspective of this woman called Wisdom, and as personified as a woman. And she makes this claim that you are to pursue her over everything else, and that wisdom is, as it says in this passage here, is far more precious than rubies and silver and choice gold and all of these things that, especially at the time that this was written, those would have been some of the big things that they would have been, pursuing as far as material goods. And so I think about this in the bigger picture of how does wisdom fit into our daily lives, especially as parents, where our lives are, oh my gosh, it is just full of opportunities to be humbled and to be shown wisdom and to learn wisdom and to recognize that we definitely don't always have all the wisdom in the world. And so I don't know, I just thought that this passage would be a really great way to be able to encourage you in your parenting journey, in your journey as a believer. If you're not a believer listening to this, that would encourage you as well. So let that soak in. If you want to use some churchy words, you can marinate on that for a little bit. And that's what I got for you for today. So let's get into the topic of discussion. This is 5 under 5, and we are talking about 5 ways to improve your fitness in 5 minutes or less. And the nature of this episode kind of came about where we spend a lot of time as coaches trying to convince the general public, general population, that big, realistic, sustainable progress, goals, and results, they tend to take a lot of time and effort when it comes to whether it's fat loss, when it comes to building muscle, when it comes to your exercise technique on specific lifts, whatever it is. We tend to talk so much about how these things can take a lot of time and you need to be in it for the long haul. And this is certainly not going to undermine any of that, but I do think that it's worth talking about some of the things that you can do right here, right now, to be able to start some of that momentum and kickstart some of that progress. If you're at the very beginning of all of this, if you've been trying for a long time and you feel like you haven't been making progress, or you haven't been making the progress that you had expected or anticipated. So I wanted to give you a couple of different pieces of recommendations here, of 5 different pieces to be exact. And these are going to cross a couple different lines as far as your training, as far as your nutrition, and as far as some of the non quote unquote fitness things that we tend to skip over a lot of times. So this is not complicated. Let's get right into it. This is number one. This is our first way to improve your fitness in 5 minutes or less. If you are not already doing this, I would love for you to start tracking your workouts. And if you are already tracking your workouts, good on you. You've got something figured out. And if you're already tracking your workouts, you might feel in some way that that should just be common sense and common knowledge that, of course, yeah, why wouldn't you track the weights that you're lifting, the specific exercises that you're doing, the specific machines that you might be using or pieces of equipment? You might think that should just be kind of second nature. Of course, why wouldn't you track that? But for a lot of people, and maybe you listening to this as well, for a lot of people, tracking your workouts as far as physically either writing it out or typing it out or whatever it is not something that a lot of people do, and it's not something that a lot of people feel is necessary. I worked many years as a trainer doing in person personal training before switching completely to online training, and I first of all, I absolutely loved training with clients in person. That was a blast, and for that season of my life of I was married, but it was pre-kids, and just being able to essentially live in the gym. That was so much fun for so many reasons, and I can talk about that at a later point too. But I would just see so many people who would walk into the door, they would check in, and they'd drop off their stuff at the locker room, and then they would just go to whatever machine was available and would just do a few reps or maybe a few sets, but a lot of times it was just a few repetitions and on a machine at whatever the weight was already set at from the previous person who used it, and then they'd kind of just move on. There was no apparent structure to what a lot of people were doing, and maybe they knew something that I couldn't discern from just watching them, but I saw this over and over and over from people who were putting in maybe less effort than they had visualized them putting in, and a lot less strategy into it as well. It was kind of just, well, this machine is open and it's here, so I'm using it. And I got a lot of this feedback from people who ended up signing up as clients, and they said, yeah, this is largely how I used to train. I didn't write anything down. I didn't keep track of anything. Even mentally, it was kind of just, well, let's just see what's open today. So, that being said, if you're not already tracking your workouts, I would highly encourage you to do that. And any method is going to work for this. I have multiple notebooks full of just pen and paper, just writing out what it was, what the date was, what machine or piece of equipment I used, the exercise, the weights that I used across the different sets, and that was it. If you are doing any sort of strength or hypertrophy training, you will likely have periods of rest in between your sets that are multiple minutes long, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes long. And so that should be plenty of time to be able to take notes on your workouts. You can get as detailed in that as you want. You can start talking about you can record your intensity by way of RIR or RPE. You can write down how you're feeling before your workout. You can write down what you ate before your workout, what you plan on eating afterward. You can do any of those kinds of things. But point being, any method's going to work, whether it's pen and paper. In my Strong Shepherds group program, the app that we use, the app platform that we use for that is super user friendly and is a great way to be able to introduce people into keeping track and logging their workouts if they've never done that before, because everything is super convenient on there. It's convenient to actually track and to just type out a few numbers rather than writing down the exercises and writing down all those things. But it's also easy to be able to see progress week over week, where on your first 7 of an exercise you can tap a little, it's like a reverse clock sort of, it's a clock with an arrow going backwards on it, and you can see what you did in the previous workouts on that same exercise to be able to get an idea of, if you're not already thinking, oh, I know where I was on the last one, the last time I did this, then you can take a look at what exactly you did of how many reps for how many sets with what weight. And so super easy to be able to use that as well. But point being, don't worry about trying to find the perfect tracking system. Just if you're not doing that already, just start a note in your phone the next time that you go to the gym and just type out what you did and how much you lifted. That's number one. If you're not already tracking your workouts, definitely do that. Number two, carry your phone on you all day, every day, to get an idea of what your average daily step count is like. And this is something that I have been doing for the better part of maybe a year and a half or so. And this has been a big conviction point on my part. If you've seen any of the posts that I've put up on social media, I've talked at length about how my step count has not been where I wanted it to be. And as objectively as I can say this, it's not where it should have been as well. From a health point of view, from a practicing what I preach point of view, it was much lower than I had wanted. I made a post about this at the end of the year, talking about my average step count for 2022 and how it was 6,000 something steps. Which for some people that might be a really great place to be able to. That might be a really great goal to be able to reach to at some point. But as someone who felt like I was largely very active, I realized that my step count was very low and was a very good indicator that I was not as active as I had thought. And I was doing, 3 workouts a week, but outside of just those planned exercise sessions, I really wasn't getting in a whole lot of extra activity. I was sitting in this exact chair right here and just sitting at my desk and working. And so that was very convicting for me. And so I realized that part of the problem was that I had no idea what my step count was like. But the other part of the problem was that I really didn't have a great way of being able to track that, because a lot of times I would just leave my phone on my desk or up in my room. And so I started carrying my phone on me as if it was just an accessory outside of, constantly checking social media and stuff. It wasn't even about that. It was just about wanting to make sure that I had an accurate step count. That's also why I started to re-wear my. I have an Apple Watch. I think it's maybe a first generation that I had gotten from what, or I had bought from one of my clients. Anyway, I've been wearing that as a way of accountability, of being able to keep an accurate step count, and this year is already maybe 1.5 times higher. I'm averaging close to 10,000 steps a day this year, and that's not on accident. That's on purpose, of way by way of knowing what my numbers were and intentionally trying to increase that too. Just as a little bit of background info on what the research says, is that 7,500 steps a day. So you tend to hear this number of 10,000 steps a day, 10,000 steps a day. And that was actually started, from my understanding, that was actually started without any particular research or methodology behind it. It was just like a pedometer that gave that as a suggestion of 10,000 steps a day. It's easy to memorize, it's easy to conceptualize. And so we can throw that number out as being if you're not hitting 10,000 steps a day, you might as well not be doing anything. Don't worry about that. What I am suggesting is that 7,500 steps a day is the lowest number of steps that you can get with the highest number of benefits related to mortality rates. This came from a study in May of 2019. It was a study that surveyed almost 17,000 women, and the end result of this, the one liner quote that they had was, "More steps taken per day are associated with lower mortality rates until approximately 7,500 steps per day," meaning that anything beyond 7,500 steps, you're not going to get meaningful increases in perceived health benefits, or actual health benefits, I should say. But up to that point, you can make some substantial increases in your overall health, short and long term, by way of shooting for numbers that are closer to that 7,500 number. So if you find that you carry your phone on you, or you have a activity tracker on your wrist, or however it is that you want to track it, if you find that after a week or so of tracking that you are hitting 3,000 steps a day, I would not say, okay, your next week you should try to hit 7,500 steps a day. That's not the goal. That's what, 2.5 times more. Just think about small incremental literal steps of maybe trying to increase your average by 500 or 1,000 steps per day over the course of a week or two or a month, and see where that gets you. And the idea being that the closer that you get to that number, the better your health outcomes will be, from a statistical point of view, which is awesome, because 7,500 steps a day is totally doable for most people. Even if you are sitting at a desk for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, you can garner that many steps with a 10-minute walk here and there, with a 15-minute lunch break, just not sitting down, those kinds of things. You have a lot of different ways of doing that, but the bigger picture being that the thing that you can do right here, right now, is to start tracking your steps. So you might see a trend here of, at the beginning, number one, of tracking your workouts, number two, tracking your steps. This is indicative of or this is representing your overall activity level, not just your strength training itself. So information is a good thing here. Knowledge is power. All right, number three, this is moving into the kitchen. Brainstorm a go to zero prep meal that you can always have on hand and that will always be ready. The thought behind this is that a lot of people, whether you have a very consistent schedule, which is not very many of us, especially as parents, if you have a very consistent schedule, or if you have a very chaotic schedule where you're constantly, your meal times are getting thrown all over the place because of your work, because of your own priorities, because of your kids' priorities, no matter where you fall on that spectrum of chaos to constant in your schedule, there will be times where you are hungry right now and you need some food right now, and you're going to have to make some decisions in a state where you are probably not going to be the most sober minded by way of just being hungry. It's the idea of, don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry. Same thing of don't make decisions about what to eat when you're hungry. You should probably make those decisions beforehand. And so if you have a go to meal that you always have on hand that takes zero prep, and that can be a really great tool in your toolbox. This can be something like you can use it on days that are overly chaotic. You can use this as a regular lunch, for example. This is how I prep out my lunches. Your priorities with this kind of brainstorming session is to find a meal that is easy, that is high protein, and that's filling. Of course, you can make it delicious, you can do all those kinds of things, but the further that you try to go down that route of adding more and more priorities onto what this type of meal can be, the more challenging it might be to find something that is very low prep on that. And so, this is going to be my suggestion here is to have some plan for a protein source that you can always have on hand. For me, in our house, we use our Instant Pot on a almost daily basis and no joke, sometimes twice a day basis. Whether it's doing meal prep, whether it's for our dinners, we'll throw in, I don't know, 3 or 4 pounds of chicken breasts or chicken thighs into the Instant Pot, set it for 15 or 20 minutes. And then in 15 or 20 minutes, we have 3 or 4 pounds worth of protein that's good for the week. And then you can sauce it, season it, do whatever you want from there. But it is so easy. You have one single pot to clean, and you only have to clean that once and you're good to go. So having some kind of a protein source on hand that way. Or you can always buy pre-cooked things like pre-cooked chicken. Costco carries pre-cooked shredded chicken or just whole chicken breast. You can do the same thing with any sort of protein source, but having something that is very easy and very quick to be able to put together from a protein point of view, that is going to be a huge asset to your nutrition goals. On top of that, your goal or your meal is probably not just going to be protein. Think about having steamer bags of vegetables. We get these from Costco. Sometimes they're individually packaged where it'll be something like a pound of frozen broccoli. You throw it in the microwave for 5 or 6 or 7 minutes and you have a whole pound of broccoli right then and there. Same thing with microwavable rice packets. Those are also easy and also from Costco now that I think about it. And so this is what I'm talking about as far as a go-to zero prep meal where you get home and your kids are fighting and screaming because they're hungry, they're tired, they've either missed their nap time, maybe they're late for nap time, but they need to eat beforehand. Maybe you need to do the same. Maybe you're late for nap time. All of those things can lead to a high stress scenario where you might be tempted to either go out to eat or to just hit up on a bunch of kind of non-planned snacks. And there are definitely times and places for both of those types of meals, but a lot of times they are not going to be your best option if you are overly stressed and you're just trying to also stick to your nutrition goals as well, and especially if that's something that happens on a regular basis. So have some kind of a go-to protein source, go-to carbohydrate source, go-to vegetable source, and something that you can in literally 5 minutes flat, you can have all of these just bam from fridge to your belly or from your pantry to your belly of just you are not skipping a beat from an energy point of view or a time point of view. So brainstorm that. That's your number 3 here is to think about what that could look like in your household. You don't have to go out and buy all the ingredients right now. That's not going to take 5 minutes, but I just want you to think about that to where you can then put those items on your next grocery trip, whether it's to the store or to our favorite Costco where just last night we went for dinner. We got our $1.50 hot dogs from Costco. Number 4 of the 5 ways to improve your fitness in 5 minutes or less. Number 4 is get a ballpark idea of what your daily protein intake should be. And as we start talking about this, I really do hope that you are seeing a theme here of knowledge being power, in that a lot of the things that you can do right here, right now, come from having an idea of what's going on, what you're already doing. Something like tracking your steps. The goal with that is not to specifically change your step count. You're not setting a goal to then do more things. You can, but the point being that knowledge is power, in knowing what your step count looks like can be very helpful. And it might be awakening in a sense of you go, oh, I am already reaching 7,500 steps a day. I don't have to try to stress about squeezing in an extra walk or an extra run or anything purely for the sake of steps. Same thing with your workouts of, oh yeah, I'm already tracking my workouts. I didn't realize how helpful that was and how maybe not common that was. Or if you're not doing those things, those can be very easy things to start implementing into your fitness routines. Same thing with your protein intake. If I were to ask you, about how much protein do you get in on a daily basis? If your answer is you don't have to have an exact number of, oh, I know that I get 131 grams of protein a day or whatever. If your answer is something along the lines of, you know what, I have zero idea, I have no concept of what that even is like, that might be a good place to start with this list here of getting a ballpark idea of what your daily protein intake should be. And this, of course, can be done through multiple methods, but some form of tracking, whether it is tracking on an app, if it's just looking at the nutrition labels as you're eating your meals, you can shoot for a number and see how close you can get to that. There's a lot of different ways of going about this, but the idea of getting a ballpark idea of what your daily protein intake looks like currently and what it should be if you have goals that are related to maintaining or changing your body composition, if it's related to hypertrophy or strength goals, as a to give you a ballpark idea of what that could look like. A really simple, really easy way of looking at this is getting somewhere between zero point 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound, not of your current body weight, but of your target body weight. And this is really helpful for a couple of reasons. One, even if you don't have goals that are related to weight loss or fat loss, you can still use, if your body composition is right where you want it to be, you can use your current body weight and you can say that that is your target body weight, so to speak. And so you can definitely use that. But for someone who is actively trying to lose 50, 100, 150, 200 pounds, their current body weight and using the 1 gram per pound of body weight is not very helpful. To go, if someone is 400 pounds and they are being told that they need to eat 400 grams of protein, that is not a very helpful or realistic recommendation for anyone, especially if someone is just getting started. And so we would take a look at target body weight of, if you have an idea of what would be a healthy and strong body weight for you, even if that's where you're at right now, you can use that and you can go, okay, up to 1 gram per pound of that weight. So if you weigh 150 pounds, you can say, all right, my goal, the upper end of my goal intake should be around 150 grams of protein per day. And you can take that number and multiply it by zero point 0.7 to get the lower end of that. You won't be significantly, at risk if you are slightly below that amount, or if you are way above that amount or slightly above it. The idea is, again, with any time that we have a range like this or a specific number, use this as as an estimate and use your own experience and your own results to be able to kind of guide what that looks like moving forward. But point being that if you don't have any idea, any concept of what any of this looks like here, start tracking that. Start getting an idea of what that could be. And your action item here is to take those uh, calculations, figure out what that zero point 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of target body weight is like for you right now. And if you want to take that a step further, I'll ask you, can you visualize what this amount of protein looks like in terms of actual meals? Let's say 150 pounds. Let's say that you're shooting for 150 grams of protein per day. Do you have a concept of what that looks like in terms of actual meals? I mean, you could say, oh, yeah, if I eat 5 meals a day, that's 30 grams of protein per meal. If I eat 3 meals a day, it's 50 grams of protein per meal. But I mean, that's simple math. But do you have any concept of what that actually looks like for your meals, your real meals that you're taking? So that is what my challenge to you is, to figure out those numbers, to get an idea of what that might look like, and to get an idea of comparing what that might look like compared to where you're currently at right now. All right, number 5. This is 5 of 5. Commit to making one change that will positively impact your sleep. All right, so we've covered some training, we've covered some just movement and activity, we've covered nutrition, and now we're covering the one thing that everybody loves to do and really does not love talking about, and that being sleep. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that we, as especially as parents, especially if you have little kids, newborns, babies, all that, the first couple of years are a wild roller coaster in terms of your sleep habits, and it can feel really, um, what would be the right word for it? Really, you can feel like you just don't have a whole lot of control over your sleep. And you hear people talking about, oh, you need to sleep 7 to 9 hours a night. And you're like, I have very little control and very little power of making that happen. So let's talk about some of the things that maybe you could do that are within your control. And that's again, the actionable point on this is commit to making one change that is within your control. So I'm just going to list off just a handful of, 5 or 6 things here that might resonate with you that are within your control, at least to some degree, and you can tailor this here. And I'm going to start with the one that's probably going to be the most controversial, and that is, as often as possible, go to bed at the same time every night. Of course, that's qualified at the beginning of that, but you may have a schedule where you could go to bed at the same time every night, but you choose to stay up late to watch a movie here, to whatever it is. You might have that might be something that would be helpful for you, of going, oh, you know what, I do have some more control over that than I had previously thought, and so I'm going to take advantage of that. There might be some things where maybe your kids have soccer practice late at night, or you have a late work meeting that's regular or whatever it is, and you go, okay, well, I can't change some of those things, but as often as I can, I'm going to commit to going to bed at the same time every night. You could take a look at your screen time, as far as it relates to your bedtime. Of, you could set a rule for yourself of, I'm not going to have any screen time within 30 minutes of going to bed, in order to help kind of transition your mind and your body into falling asleep every night. Part of that is, maybe you could leave your phone in another room at night, which I know is a very unpopular thing, because everyone, again, is like, well, yeah, what if there's a lot of scenarios that people talk about, and I have yet to run into a scenario where wearing my activity tracker, wearing my Apple Watch to sleep, and it gives me notifications. It'll start vibrating if there's an emergency call in the middle of the night or whatever it is. I use it for my alarm as well, which is awesome. Um, I've yet to run into a scenario where I would have missed out on something if I had left my phone outside of my room, but I still had my watch on, if that makes sense. And so, if you are in a position where you do have some kind of a Apple Watch or activity tracker, Fitbit, whatever it is, you could definitely try that one out, if you found that that was going to be helpful for you. As another quick thing, you could pay attention to your caffeine timing in the afternoon, of thinking about how much caffeine you're having after lunch, let's say, and when that happens. And you could take a look at, okay, maybe you try to limit your caffeine to no caffeine within 6 hours of going to bed, or 8 hours of going to bed, or whatever it is. The idea, again, is to get some knowledge, get some insight, experiment with this a little bit. As a final recommendation on this, we've done both of these within the last 2 years, is getting a new mattress, and just over this last week, getting new pillows. These kinds of things are game changing, and I don't want to overstate that, but we have loved our new mattress over the past. That was our anniversary gift to ourselves over maybe 2 years ago, and just this last week we got new pillows, and that has been, we've tried out like 3 of them, and that has been awesome. Big time, easy game changer that gets you excited about going to sleep each night. And as someone who is naturally a night owl, that is not my natural bent to get excited about sleeping. So I'm all about all of these things here, and I would encourage you to try to pick one, not just from this list, but just in general, to commit to making one change that will positively impact your sleep. All right, those are our 5 under 5, and that's what I'll leave you with for today's episode. As always, I'm going to encourage you to take a screenshot of this before we end, and take it right now, right here, right now. Take a screenshot of the podcast and post it to your favorite social media page. Tag me in it. Let me know that you are not only listening, but that you're enjoying, and that you're sharing the love as well, to help other parents just like you with all of this. So, I'm Coach Jay. Thanks for hanging with me, and we'll see you next time.